Hi everyone, today I want to share with you a strategy to solve the interpretation problem. The target problem is that let CT be the amount of heroin in metric tons traded in UST after 2000. Interpret each of the following mathematical statements in practical terms. Do not use the word instantaneous or the phrase rate of change.
When you're solving the problem, something that you may be confused with is that the transformation of an equation might be happen, and it is difficult to identify the variable accurately and generalize the relationship between them. Like D here, be careful that it's an inverse function. So when you see this type of equation, you got watch out for the input and output because they are the opposite to the original function.
The strategy we summarize is called annotated variable method. The first step of that is to carefully read the question above and to find as much information as you can. The second is to identify the potential variables in a question that may have an impact. For example, in this background, CT and T can be both viewed as our potential variables. And the third step is to distinguish which is the input and which is the output through observation. That is who changes for whom. The input usually appear in the brackets representing the output. So in this situation, T is included in the CT. So T is our independent variable and C is our dependent variable. And if the independent variable is not indicated in the brackets of dependent variable, we can use the next step to help distinguish. The next step is to annotate each variable with its unit. The relationship of the units can help us to find the corresponding relationship of the variables.
Again, according to the question, if an inverse function shows up, you have to determine whether the meaning of input and output needs to be changed. And finding the correct value of the derivative is also important. Otherwise, there might be a mistake made. Last one is while expressing the meaning of a mathematical statement, you must pay more attention on using appropriate words. For example, the concept of approximately needs to be specifically proposed. Now, how to solve this problem? Let's focus on D, which is asking the derivative of the inverse function of C. When x is 30, output is 0.5. As I mentioned before, the input and output change their roles in an inverse function. So that 30 indicates the amount of heroin with the unit of metric tons, and 0.5 will be the time period with a unit of year. And the unit of the outcome would be year per metric ton. And therefore, it's trying to say how many years are needed for one extra unit heroin is traded. And first, an incorrect example is given below, which didn't include the term approximately or use our own words to describe each mathematical terms. And the best way to express it is in the year where there were 30 metric tons of heroin traded in the US, it took approximately half a year for the yearly trade to reach 31 metric tons.
Sometimes we may think that interpretation problem is not important as the application problems, but in fact, in those application problems related to calculus, it is important to make clear the relationships between the input, output, and derivatives, and it's necessary to clearly interpret everything in your own words in your mind to set up understanding, which determines whether the known information can be readily used in follow-up problem solving.